Chapter 13. Escape. When Susie woke up, the room was in darkness. A small light was coming from the fireplace, where the fire was still burning a little. A large white moon could be seen through the window. What time was it? Susie stood up to look at her watch in the moonlight. As she got to her feet, her head started to hurt badly, right between the eyes. Quickly she sat down again. Was she ill? Why did she feel so bad? And where was she? She had had a terrible dream, the worst ever. But it wasn't real. It was just a dream. Or was it? Looking around, she saw that she was in a place she did not know. Not the flat in London, not the holiday house. Where, then? There were some large pictures on the walls. Oh, Richard, of course. In his house. That was where she must be. Had she fallen asleep here? They were going to see Charlie, weren't they? What had happened? Where was Richard? Trying hard, she remembered having a cup of coffee and feeling sleepy. Then she thought of something and began to be afraid. Perhaps Richard had drugged her. There was a drug she knew that people used. She had read stories about women who were given this drug and then hurt. What was its name? The drug. She couldn't remember. Standing up again, she moved carefully towards the door. She tried to put the light on, but it didn't work. The door was locked. "Richard!" she shouted. There was no answer. Again she shouted, but her voice only sounded in the empty room. Now she knew she was right to be afraid. What was Richard trying to do? What did he want from her? He must be mad and dangerous. She must escape. Run away from here, from him, now. She went quickly to the window. It was locked too, of course. But looking down, she saw that the room was above the front door of the house. She could see the small roof over the door just below her. She could get down onto the roof and jump to the ground from there. She must break the window. But how? She went back to the fire. A half-burnt piece of wood. She could use that. The glass in the window broke with a lot of noise. Richard would hear for sure. Quickly, she climbed out and dropped down onto the small roof. That wasn't too bad, she thought. Now for the big jump. She looked down at the ground. It seemed a long way away. Was that a sound in the room behind her? There was no time to lose. She shut her eyes and stepped over the side of the roof. She landed hard on the ground, but she hadn't hurt herself. She stood up. Everything was okay. There was a shout in the room above the door. She must go, fast. The moon made it easy to see the road. As she ran, a sound came from Richard's house which made her blood run cold. It was a terrible, angry scream. She looked behind her at the house, but there was nothing following her. Yet. In front of her the road was clear, the snow on the road shining in the grey light. Then, a moment later, she saw a man coming towards her further down the road. He was holding a gun, Without thinking, she turned from the road and ran across a field towards a high hill. She started to climb the hill. It was difficult in the dark and the snow. She held onto plants and small trees to stop herself falling. Soon her hands were cut. She used her clothes to clean the blood from her hands. When she got to the top, she realized that she was on Bryn Mawr Hill. Of course. Richard had said that his house was quite near Kinghorty House. Perhaps she could get back there. But it was locked, she remembered. The key was in her bag, and she had left her bag in Richard's house. Oh, God, what was she going to do? And what about Charlie? He must be very worried about her. What would he think? Perhaps she should go to Tom's house. He lived near too, didn't he? But which way was it to his house? Looking around her on the hill, she had no idea where to go. She was very tired. She must stop for a bit first. She must sit down and rest. She needed to think what to do. She had a terrible headache, and her arms and legs were hurting. She could go no further. The ground was cold and wet with snow, but she didn't care. Just then, she realized that an icy wind was blowing across the top of the hill. She was in the same place where she had taken the photographs on that first day, on the little hill. As she looked back at the way she had just come, the wind became stronger. The noise of the wind was in her ears, and she could hear nothing else. Then she saw that coming up the small hill towards her was a very large black animal. The moonlight lit up its eyes, and they were burning like fires. When the animal saw her, it began to make a strange and terrible noise like a wolf. This was not a dream. This was real. She must run, but she could not move. The animal was coming closer, quickly, its great legs working to carry it. It was moving faster than the wind. Susie watched, unable to do anything. It was very near now, and about to jump at her. Suddenly, there was the sound of a gunshot. The animal rose up on its back legs. It seemed more than 3 meters tall. Its lips were pulled back in a terrible smile, and its large, dangerous teeth were white in the moonlight. Something silver could be seen in the hair of its stomach. As Susie screamed, another shot rang out. A black hole seemed to open in the animal's body. It turned with a wild shout and ran towards the wood on its 2 back legs. At that moment, Susie realized something with a terrible certainty. What she had seen was not an animal. It was a man. "Well, I'll be—" a voice said behind her. A voice she knew was Tom's. "Come on, young lady. We'd better take you home." Chapter 14. Silver Bullet. It was a long time before Susie could stop shaking. She felt so cold. The worried faces of Tom and his wife Catherine watched her as she drank the hot, sweet tea. They were good people, but she felt small and lost. They'd taken away her wet and bloody clothes. They'd put a blanket round her, like a child. She was in the warm, light sitting room of their house. She was safe now, after the darkness and danger. Catherine smiled at her. "You'd better stay here with us, my dear." She was quite worried about the young woman who was sitting and shaking on the sofa. Something terrible had happened. It was clear that Susie could not return to her holiday house. "Tell me," Catherine wanted to know. "Tom says he found you out walking about up on the hill. It's the middle of the night. Did something happen? What were you doing there?" I don't really know." She was too tired to try to remember. She started to cry and cry. She couldn't stop. "Now, Catherine," Tom said. "See what you've done. No more questions now. Come on, my dear, you need to get to bed." That first night in Tom and Catherine's house, Susie slept deeply and dreamlessly. Several times during the following morning, Catherine looked at her. She saw how white Susie's face was as she slept. Catherine knew that she needed to sleep. She moved away quietly. Susie did not wake until the afternoon. Slowly, in the days that followed, Susie began to return to the world again, but she couldn't remember much about what had happened. She said to Catherine, "Richard was taking me to see Charlie. We went to his house. Then I don't know what happened. Perhaps I went for a walk and got lost. I don't know. What must Charlie be thinking? Can I phone him?" "Now, there's no need to be worried about that husband of yours. Tom has already seen him and told him what happened," Catherine said to her. "What did Tom tell Charlie?" Susie asked. "Oh, that he found you up on Bryn Mawr Hill in the middle of the night while he was out hunting for the thing that's been killing his sheep," Catherine replied. "What did Charlie say?" "I don't know, my dear." Catherine looked at her. "But I know Tom told him that you're fine. He promised your Charlie that you'll go and see him very soon, just as soon as you're strong again." "Charlie must think I've really gone mad," Susie thought to herself. "Perhaps I have. I've lost my bag," she said to Catherine. "I don't know where it is. My money's in it, and the key to King Hordy House." She felt stupid. "Perhaps it's in your holiday house," Catherine said. "I don't think so. I don't know," Susie said, unhappily. "Well then, perhaps Richard's got it," Catherine said. "Ah, yes, perhaps he has it," Susie said finally. She realized that the sound of Richard's name made her feel strangely afraid. She started to shake a little. No, Catherine put her arm around her. "It's all right. Don't worry about it now. I'll ask Tom to go over to Richard's house and get your bag for you." Susie knew that she had been into a place of darkness, the underworld. For a moment she had wanted to stay there, yet somehow she had escaped with her life. She didn't want to try to understand yet. It was too soon. She just knew that the place she had seen was dangerous. It was somewhere that living people do not usually go. If they do not usually return. A day or two later, Tom was sitting at the kitchen table, eating his dinner. Susie saw that her bag was on the table next to him. "You got it, then?" she said. "Yes," he said, his mouth full of food. He kept his eyes on his plate. He didn't look at Susie. He knew what she was going to ask. He wasn't sure that he wanted to answer. "Did Richard have it?" she asked.
Well, yes.
Tom stopped, looking uncomfortable. Something in Tom's voice made Susie ask another question. "Did you see him, then?"
No, he wasn't there.
Tom looked at the table.
Strange thing is, no one's seen Richard lately, you know. He hasn't been into the pub since that night, replied Tom.
Oh?
And what's even stranger, Tom spoke very quietly, he told everyone, you know, in the pub, that he was working on his house.
Yes, Susie said. He was. I saw it. A lot of it had fallen down and the windows were broken. He said he had to start building some of it again. There were a couple of rooms that were okay, I think. She remembered a room full of large pictures.
Well, this morning, Tom began, I had to move my sheep down onto a field on the other side of the hill, down near Richard's house, so I decided to go and ask if he had your bag.
Go on, Susie said.
Well,
he looked carefully at her.
If it ever was a house, it's not a house anymore. It's fallen down. There's trees and grass growing on the stones, too. I went for a closer look. I'd say no one's touched that place for years. No one's been near it or done anything to it. It's just a mountain of stones. I'd say it's been like that for 100 years or so.
Tom's voice shook. Susie could hear that he was afraid of what he was saying. The hair on her skin stood up, and a cold feeling went down her body. "Where was the bag, Tom?" she asked finally.
It was lying there on the stones, and I found something else, too, he said softly, in the woods, on the hill.
"What?" Susie asked.
After a few seconds, Tom got up and went out of the room, returning with something in his hands. He put it on the table in front of Susie. Looking down, Susie saw that it was a large, heavy black belt with a silver dog's face on it. Tom watched her closely. Her face had lost all its colour.
"Tom, I have to ask you something," she said slowly. "What really happened up there on the hill? You know, that night when you found me. Was it a dog out after the sheep? And you shot it?"
"Perhaps," Tom said. "I was fairly sure I hit him. Not the first time. The second time, I think." Susie looked at him. He hadn't answered the real question. "Yes, I'm pretty sure I got him in the heart," Tom went on. "Strange thing was, I went to look the next day and, well, there was no blood, no body, nothing." Then he said, "You had a lucky escape. Lucky I had this, and some of these." He held up his gun and a silver bullet. "You know, he nearly got you," Tom said.
"He?"
Susie asked. They looked at each other. They both knew that what they were thinking was impossible. After a few moments, Susie said quietly,
"I'd like to see Charlie."
"Sure, no problem," Tom said. Catherine's going shopping this afternoon, she said. She can take you in later.
Thanks. You've both been very kind, you know,
Susie said. She thought about seeing Charlie and what she could say to him. She wanted to say that the days they'd spent together here had been good. In London, they'd not seen each other much in the last few months. They had such busy lives. She wanted to tell him she was sorry that he was hurt. Perhaps they could try again to have a holiday. And she wanted to talk about having a child sometime. Not now, but soon. Chapter 15. Voice of the Beast.
From where I am now, the rivers are silver snakes. The fields are green squares, and the trees are like small flowers. Below me, your world is just a map. I see the sheep. They're the size of stones on a beach. They're dirty and grey against the snow that still lies in the fields. The woods on the side of the hill are black as the night. A thin line of smoke rises from a house at the bottom of the hill. My hill. 2 women come out of the house. They look like toy people. They get into their toy car, and I hear it start. It sounds like an angry fly. Shall I call to them? Just for fun? Just to see, even from here, if she's still afraid? I can see very well, you know. I have the eyes of a bird that kills. So, what happened to me, you may ask? Do you remember what I said? No, probably not. I'll tell you again. There is nothing you can do to escape from us. You may think you can kill us with your silver bullets, but you cannot. Well, yes, okay, the farmer did hit me with his silver bullet. Then my body became a stone. One of the stones that the farmer passed, in fact, as he searched for me. If you think this sounds impossible, look carefully at the large stones that sit on hills in wild places. Look for the eyes and faces of the stones. Ask yourself what lies locked inside them. I returned for a short time to the world of darkness and the undead. But as I have told you, I will always need the blood of living things. I will always need to move into your world. I cannot stay away. Bad luck for you. We just move from one body to another, from one place to another. This time, I'm tired. You cannot possibly understand how tired it makes me, time after time having to find a new hiding place. So no, I will not go again around the earth. I will stay here among these woods and fields. Now I am one of the red kites that fly over the Welsh hills, one of those birds that look for animals to kill and eat. This is good. From where I am, I can see everything. It is true that my plan did not work as I wanted. She was stronger than I thought. She escaped from me when I thought she was mine. I made a mistake. My plan was not careful enough. But there is something she does not yet know, and I will wait now for that something to happen. Wait? What does that mean? The time passes? You people, I feel sorry for you. You talk of beginnings and endings. But the beginning and the end of the world are beyond your understanding. You are too stupid. Don't you know that the beginning is still happening? Those sounds that come from beyond the stars, that your scientists pick up on their radios, they think those sounds will show them how the world began. Actually, they are the last sounds of a timeless, lazy laugh. Your world is a great and terrible joke. And those strange animals that people talk of, the Loch Ness Monster in Scotland, the Yeti in the Himalayas, the Monogrande in Brazil, the Chupacabras in Mexico, the Volkodlak in Central Europe, what are they? They are children of the darkness. They are part of the joke. They carry messages from the Joker. Sorry, I am forgetting. What was I going to say? You are waiting to know, aren't you? All right then. Because you ask, I'll tell you. She will have a child soon. When she looks through her camera at her baby, she will see that I am the father. For the camera does not lie, but shows the world as it really is. With her camera, she sees things that her eyes cannot see. And I promise, by my own father, Lycaon, who killed a child and gave it to the god Zeus to eat, that I will return to take what is mine.